I'm going to share a secret. So, if you are writing or submitting a novel right now, the most important thing to traditional editors is actually just the most important thing to readers, which is an emotional and compelling story. So, if you think that traditional publishers have an advantage, really the advantage is to be able to recognize what makes a story emotional, what makes a story really great. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. So I want to talk about the 6 most common mistakes that professional editors see in your plot and in your manuscript. So starting with number 1, the first thing that really takes away from a great story is a weak or wandering plot. And so as I go through these, just take a feel. How confident are you in this area? So, what makes a plot weak? First and foremost, the characters don't have clear fears and desires. There's nothing at stake, there's nothing to challenge or change them. And so, when we look at the roots of the characters, make sure that they really want something. If it's love, if it's safety and survival, if it's fortune, whatever they want, make sure they have a compelling reason to go after it. And then in every single scene, bring that through. So the other thing that makes a weak or wandering plot is that when we get into a scene, it's not really there for a specific reason. And every single scene, we need to bring through that drive that's rooted in the psychology and fears and desires of our character. The big thing they're going after that's going to make us keep turning pages through that plot. The second thing is an unclear central conflict. So when we read something, we often are reflecting on our own life because the specific situation in the novel probably hasn't happened to us. That's why it feels like an escape. And yet, at the same time, the values at the core of that conflict reflect on our own lives, connect to us at a universal level. So, for instance, freedom versus oppression, poverty versus prosperity, love versus indifference or loneliness. These are really compelling values that affect us in our own lives. And so it's what makes your plot emotional and universal and really connect with your readers. The next thing is flat characters, especially the protagonist. So, flat characters happen often. I think the biggest thing that causes flat characters is loving your genre more than your characters. So, loving your genre, loving the archetypes of a plot, loving the beats of a specific genre can often make us think, I'm going to write a horror and we're just going to have the zombies run on in here. But we don't really feel it connected to the people in the plot, and so it becomes superficial. The characters are flat. They're there to serve the conventional, stereotypical, often cliche part of the plot. And so you'll see this. I like to call it a down genre. So when you really love a genre, you're just going to read everything in that genre, and that's awesome. But if you want to transcend your genre and reach readers that don't often read what you're writing. Transcending genre happens with, Harry Potter. Frida McFadden seems to transcend her genre like crazy. She's selling people who've never read thrillers. And so if you want to do that, make sure you love the psychology of your characters. You don't make them flat, and you love that more than just your genre or the conventions of your plot. Next thing, unearned emotional beats. So these all connect together. Often, if you jump into the intensity of something before we really care about the people, or before we're really connected emotionally and it's meaningful or significant in some way, you're going to lose your readers. And so, how do we do that? This is the balance between inner and outer. So for instance, plenty of action movies these days, they start with, people going to war or people, being confronted with something terrible. But unless we're connected at an emotional level to the people at stake, you might lose our interest pretty quickly. We need to understand, a mother or a child or a heroic figure of some sort. For instance, the Hunger Games, it didn't start out with the crazy action survival scenes. It actually connected us to the characters before it went into the action scenes. However, it raised the stakes right away. We knew that from the beginning that people were trying hard to survive, and then we got right into the reaping. So, one reason that transcended its genre, YA dystopia, is because it loved the psychology of the characters and the stakes were meaningful. Therefore, the action scenes were meaningful because we as readers had a lot of emotions at stake. So, how do you not really integrate those emotional beats? By creating info dumps. So, you'll be able to recognize it when you see it. If a novel is telling you just gobs of background information about a character without integrating it into the action of a scene, that's an info dump, especially when a story begins with a lot of exposition. And for writers, this is a hard balance because often you feel like, okay, in order to understand this story, you need to know all of this stuff. And to a certain degree, that's true. And to a certain degree, often we feel obligated to info dump that all at the beginning, but we don't. It's not going to be meaningful unless, the characteristics or the history or the emotional significance is tied into action and atmosphere and setting and all of those great things. If we can feel our way into the information, if we can feel how much one person means to another, I like using Titanic as an example. Let me do it again. So, for instance, we know how choked Rose feels by the aristocracy because she's hyperventilating and running out to the back of the ship and she's thinking about jumping over and committing suicide. So that raises the stakes and it bonds us emotionally to both of the characters before we get into the big action. So info dumps, resist, don't do them. It's not going to be relevant unless we feel it. And that brings us, speaking of Titanic, to the climax. There's no escalation. So, something amazing when we really love a story, it's that we understand what's at stake, and then the protagonist or protagonists become challenged by that same thing with bigger and bigger obstacles that then force them to make a major decision or to represent what they believe in the climax or in a tragedy, lose based on their beliefs. So they see it through to the end. And then there's this transformative moment in the climax where our active protagonist makes a choice. And then that represents all of this stuff we've been talking about, the emotions, the conflicts, the fears and desires, the universal values. It all gets wrapped up together. And we just have that whoosh breakthrough moment at the climax. It's really important. So, this has been a relatively quick video. And so you can go through this information that I've just talked about, see where you're confident, see where you want to focus. And if you would like some free resources to really scribble things out and get your ideas and shape them with prompts, may I recommend Outline Your Book on One Page. I love this tool. I created it, but I created it because your entire plot becomes simpler when you can see the whole thing on one darn page. So I give that out for free. Just sign up right below this video. You'll see the free sign up. And we have NaNoWriMo coming up. It is almost National Novel Writing Month. Almost forgot my acronym there, but it's almost National Novel Writing Month. November is a time to get so much done and make great progress on your book. But I've heard that the one complaint that people have about NaNoWriMo is that they have a ton of words, they have a ton of writing, but it's not really a book. It doesn't fit into a plot. So I have one more resource I have to recommend for NaNoWriMo, which is the Rapid Novel Blueprint. This shows you how to write efficiently and still have great structure and have a book that you can actually sell, that you can actually put out there. So I'll have this link below too, so you can grab it if you want it. And remember, rapid doesn't mean you have to finish your book in 1 month. I personally don't know how I would ever do that and really be proud of it. It's great to make progress, but rapid doesn't mean 1 month. Rapid just means more efficiently than you're already writing. So I put these videos out every single Friday. Subscribe below if you want more tips on writing a novel. I'm here for you. So much love. Bye.